Hello. This is what Wize Women Want here on Charlottesville CPA Comcast Channel 13. And we are here, I'm Dr. Daria Brzezinski, and we are here. We have wonderful conversations every week. I'm really excited this week because I have women here today on the panel who have broken the glass ceiling in the automobile industry. We have both a mechanic and a woman who has been in sales in the automotive industry for many, many years. So to my left is Lindsay Cason, who is studying to be a mechanic, on her way to be a mechanic at Scott's Ivy Exxon. And to her left is Simona Holloway. And Simona has been a salesperson at CMA's Colonial Auto Center for many, 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 many years. I met her when I first moved to Charlottesville years ago. She was at Colonial Auto, and I just couldn't believe that she was still working there over and over again and so accomplished for so many years. So ladies, I want to start off by letting people know why you got into this. What was did you have an inspiration in order to be able to get into this industry? So would you like to start, Lindsay?
Sure. So when I was in high school, there was an auto mechanics class, and I wanted to take that, and I was denied because of my gender. And the principal backed up that with the teacher. So at that time, I said, okay, I guess that's how it is. And so for 15 years, I continued working in the restaurant industry. And then last year, I took the plunge, learned about K-Tech, and said, you know, it's my life. I can do anything I want. As I've been telling my boys, you can do and be anything you want. And so I signed up and have been taking the classes for about a year now, and I've been loving it. Just the knowing the accomplishments that you can make on even something simple is very rewarding. And so that really, that strive that I took has really changed for the better for me.
But why auto mechanics, of all things?
So I've always been very interested in vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved the way they look, the way they sound, but there's a lot more more in depth than that. So just having that opportunity to discover, you know, within the vehicle and what it's all about, it's very very interesting and challenging to say. So,
Simona, how about you? What was your inspiration? How did you find yourself in this industry?
Well,
that was many years ago,
that was
before
many years
women
ago.
were in the industry.
And it was sort of a fluke. My mother needed to purchase a car, and she had gone car shopping. And she wasn't taken very seriously. And she told me about it, and she said, whenever, I lived in North Carolina at the time, and she said, whenever you come in town, please go with me. So we did. We went to 3 or 4 different dealerships, and we never found anyone at the dealership that looked like my mom or me. Mm-hmm. So we were sort of looking to just find someone we could relate to. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that we couldn't deal with the gentlemen that were there, but we just were trying to be comfortable with someone that we could just talk to, and, you know, as a female, just kind of say, you know, we want something that's gonna be low maintenance or look good or be in a certain budget. And we just couldn't find anybody. But at Colonial Auto Center, there were 2 African-American gentlemen, and there was 1 Caucasian lady. So that was the first lady that we saw at any of the dealerships, and the 2 minority gentlemen. And so we ended up getting a car there. But later, they called me because they were a little impressed with me and how I carried myself, and said if I ever wanted a job in sales. And I said I might take you up on that one day. And my mom wasn't well later, and I decided to have the current job that I had to move me to Charlottesville to be closer to her. And I didn't quite like what I was doing, so put on my suit, got my briefcase, my resume, and I went there and said, here I am. You need me. I know the community. You don't have anybody that looks like me. I'll make a difference. And I've been there ever since.
Bravo, bravo.
So.
And that's, how many women feel like they can take charge like that, and walk into a company and say, and that's the whole point,
Right.
of getting into a business and being in a niche industry and breaking the glass ceiling.
Yep.
You've got to have that kind of courage. And I will tell you from my personal experiences, and I will talk about some of them today on this show, but there is a huge difference from women talking to me in the sales department as opposed to the men. And I have, just recently, I purchased a car, and the guy who sold it to me lied to me, told me all kinds of, the tires were rotted, and he told me they were brand new. He told me the radio was, got Wi-Fi and it didn't, or was a CarPlay and it wasn't. And so anyway, long story short, a woman came to help me, and she told me everything about that car. And one of the things that really impressed me was, you have, on my certain kind of car, you have to have the air conditioner on in order to run the heat. And I was like, I had no idea. I've had one of these cars for forever, and nobody ever told me
Details.
that. Yes. And so I think that's really, part of the benefit of having a woman, woman to woman. I noticed today, I was at a career fair, and I watched the women who were talking to other women and men who were talking to women. And I watched the women who were the sales reps taking the time for each individual that they were talking to, answering their questions, asking them questions. Whereas I watched the men who weren't doing the same. They kind of acted like, they weren't really wanting to be there. So
I think we lay groundwork.
Yes.
In sales.
Yes.
Sometimes men are looking for the immediate gratification and satisfaction of the accomplishment of the sale, where women want to make sure you're happy with the processes, and then you have the great end result of having them as your customer. But we're laying the groundwork to build up to the sale, and then it just seems like you're more comfortable and you have a reliability that you're looking for, and that's definitely important.
Well, I've said this before and on the show, that business is all about relationships, and relationships are all about trust. Tell us the story of the guy who came in with the brake issue.
So
This is a perfect example of what I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, one of our regulars, he drives maybe about 3,000 miles a year. So he gave us a call yesterday, and he said, he asked us to look at the history. So the company that I work for, we do digital inspections. So we're able to show you what repairs are needed, or how your vehicle looks. So the last time that we saw him was in September for a state inspection, and his brakes were, rear brakes were reading 8/32 or 8 millimeters, and he went into the dealership to get a recall done, and his the dealership told him that his rear brakes were at 2/32, which is the minimum for state inspection. So when he called us, he said, please look at the history, because I just don't feel that that's correct. So we went to look at his history, saw that his brake measurements were at 8/32. So we asked him to come in, and we would do a brake inspection to see, hey, we could have been wrong, they could have been wrong,
Right.
there's something could have happened. So because of the short amount of mileage that he drives a year, what ended up happening was corrosion built up on the right side of the brake. So with that, the left side was completely normal, 8/30 seconds like it was in September. So he felt more comfortable as we showed him and told him, so this is what's going on, and so he understood it better. He ended up replacing the rear brakes because they were 6 years old, and he showed his gratitude of just the appreciation of what we did.
And you took the time, and you were more personable, and you took his safety into account.
And that's the main priority that we have is if you walk out unsatisfied, we will make sure that you're satisfied, but most importantly is your safety.
I think a lot of customers just want to know why. They want to know not that it needs to be done, but why and what the result is and how it can be accomplished.
I know, before I was lucky, I think, because my father decided, I was the oldest and only girl, and my father decided in order for me to drive a car, I needed to know all the parts. And so made me take apart, put it back together again. Now, he didn't do that to any of my brothers, but he did it to me. Thankfully, once I was driving from Philadelphia to Florida, and my car kept overheating. And so I put a toggle switch inside my car, ran a wire to the fan, and every time, I'd stop at a stop sign or I'd turn the fan on, with the toggle switch in the car. So, but not a lot of people know how to do something like that, and especially we women. And so what I want to talk about is how did the car industry get to the point where, it feels like they're all about selling rather than being honest with you and telling you. I mean, just buying that car and the guy lying about everything about that car really upset me to no end. I actually wrote a letter to the president of the company who responded immediately, came to Charlottesville to talk to me. And I said, this is a small community, and business is about people knowing each other. And I said, I have a huge footprint here in social media, and you don't need to do this kind of business in this town.
Exactly.
So what is it about the car industry? I mean, it has a bad reputation between being a mechanic and sales. How do we get to this place, and how do we change it?
I mean, you could probably put that within any industry with sales, that people want to make the sale, that most sales personnel may be paid on commission, so no sale, no money.
Yeah.
So you want to make the sale, but at what cost do you want to make that sale? And just like you said, having a big footprint, telling someone the truth and being ethical and following up and making sure they're happy and checking in with them, all of those things have helped me to keep. I have probably a 90% clientele of repeat or referral.
Wow.
And the only way that I've been able to do that is to say what I mean what I say, and people can trust me. And they can actually get me practically any time. So I feel that they're getting me along with their car, that they're never, like, for example, I had an older customer who wasn't used to the push button that cars do now. And you have to put your foot on the brake.
You mean to start it?
To start it.
Yeah.
And you have to put your foot on the brake and hold it in order for the car to start. So if she didn't have my number that she's able to get me practically 24/7, she would have called AAA or someone else, or just said, my car doesn't start. And that's time wasted and other issues that really weren't the problem. So when she called to me, I said, are you remembering to hold the brake in when you push the button? And she said, I gotta hold the brake? And I said, yes. She goes, oh, I forget that sometimes. She did it, it started it. And that was like 5 minutes and she's on her way. But being there for the person with their product for the time that they own it, I think they like that confidence level.
Absolutely. And one of the things you do is every time you pick up the phone, you say the name of the person. Hi, Dari, how are you?
Yes.
You know, you're always personable, no
Well.
matter who, you know, no matter when, you know, you answer the phone. So that's really important as well.
That's part of the old school.
So let's talk about that. Okay, you claim old school, all right? What does old school mean
No,
to you?
it's just the things that we used to do.
Well,
that,
tell everybody what you tell everybody what your office looks like. I love the beer thing that's spilled that looks like it's
Coffee.
spilled. I was coffee.
It's the
Yeah,
coffee.
I was ready to clean it up.
That's a product that we promote to keep the paint and the leather and everything where it doesn't stain and things don't soak in. And when you have acid rain, it helps to deflect that on the porous
Well,
paint.
the mother in me
So,
was cleaning
yeah,
up the
yeah,
mess
so
because
it's
I
just
thought I
an
spilled
example.
something.
But when I do Facebook, sometimes with my customers, my hashtag is Old School Sales Diva, and I take pictures. I still use like a 35 millimeter camera. I take pictures of everybody that has purchased a car from me. I've got tons and tons of photo albums, and you can go back in. Sometimes somebody will come in and say, I don't see my picture up here on the wall. And I go, you bought your car in 2008. Let's go look at the 2008 book. And then I pull it out and say, there you are, you know. So just little things, having candy, having magazines around, just having a notepad that people can write notes with, making sure you shake someone's hand, say thank you. An older person, still call them Mr. or Mrs., ma'am, sir. Just old school civility.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people in today's world lack, the civility and etiquette and respect. And I kind of still have that.
Lindsay, you were talking about old school as well. What were you telling us about, especially, you know, in the garage?
So, I mean, I've always been a note taker. So, you know, like we were discussing earlier with when you're on the phone or, you know, anything that you need to remember, taking notes is, you know, just your brain going to your hand to talk it out. And so, you know, if sometimes when if you're typing on the computer and if you're trying to multitask, sometimes I just can't get it right. So the notes taking, you know, handwriting is definitely helpful. But I love everything that you do.
Thank you.
I love because, you know, like with technology, it's amazing how the lack of respect that the younger generation can have, you know, with just overall society.
Well, talk about technology in the mechanic field too, because, you know, I remember the day when there was no digital, and I mean, I used to work on my own car, and then all of a sudden there's just no way. Like, I have a Toyota Prius, and the battery's in the back of the car, and you know, when the battery didn't work one day, I opened it up and there was it was full of water inside, you know, so I can't work on my car anymore. I mean, it's because of the technology and all the digital and everything. So how has that affected? So did you start with it prior to digital, or have you always been in the, you know, like young people are always in the kind of the digital age?
So when I was younger, I did a few things here and there on older vehicles. For the most part, I've always owned older vehicles. So I own a 2004 right now, so it's kind of in between where it's still, you know, a few old-fashioned aspects of a vehicle, but then, you know, I have the electrical seats and there's a navigation system which I don't use because it needs to be updated. So what I've been learning mostly, which I will actually tomorrow be taking a technician class for the push button vehicle. So just what I've been learning now is pretty much in between, but more so back in the days, you were a mechanic, but now they're being called technicians because of the technological aspect of the vehicles. But yeah, with learning, it's a lot more detailed, and you have to be careful, even more careful, especially with the modern vehicles, with the modules that vehicles have now is absolutely incredible. With you know, you have the module for the body, for the windows and the seats.
Well, and I can't even, the Prius, I wouldn't even dare try to jump the car. You know, when the battery went dead, I went under the hood and went, I have no idea how to jump this car because the battery's in the back. You know, how do I jump this car? I have no idea. So it's really, you know, I do have an older car as well. And so I know how to do all the work on that car because I've been doing it forever. And, you know, I was taught how to change the oil and do, you know, fill up all the fluids and things like that. Now with the electric car, I'm like, I don't even want to touch it because I don't even know what to do about it.
Right. I was going to chime in on what Lindsay was saying about they're not mechanics anymore, they're technicians. And with that, there are more women in the field because you aren't getting your fingernails and hands all greasy, and you're not really going in, and things aren't oily as much as they used to be. When people come in, their car is diagnosed and it's put onto a machine, and you're going in, and the many components that are in it, you figure it out from what the computer is telling you. So within our 15 franchises that we have, a number such as like maybe 30% or more are women now.
Really?
And, as service advisors, parts personnel, technicians. We are just growing by leaps and bounds, and mainly so many things that used to be male dominated are now coming in with a lot more women. And the owner of our dealership is a woman, and that's unusual as well too.
That's
so
incredible.
Well, I
she
will
set the
tell you that
precedence.
I had a difficult time finding women to be on the panel because there are so few. I went to the dealer where I purchased my car and said, hey, I'd like to have a woman on the panel. He said, well, we don't have one. And I said, well, doesn't that make you feel bad, you know, that you don't have a woman in this you know, organization? And, you know, as we were talking earlier, I'd much rather go to a woman for, you know, for whatever reason. I feel more comfortable talking to a woman because she'll take the time, you know, to spend time with me. Are there any kinds of red flags that women need to, you know, both from the sales end and from the mechanics end? Most women aren't adept at, you know, knowing what the heck's, like I was smelling foul smell in my air conditioner one day, and I looked everywhere to figure out, took the leaves out, did everything, and I couldn't figure out what the smell was, and I took it in. I had no idea there was a filter on my car, and it's
filter.
more than 10 years old, and I had no idea. And when he pulled it out, it was like, oh my God.
Just
you know,
like in your air conditioner
I did
unit
not
at home.
know.
Yes.
So how can we educate women? What can we do when they go to the mechanic or when they go to buy a car to help them not get, you know, taken?
Well, we all train the same way. I mean, we take courses.
You mean salespeople?
Salespeople,
Okay.
yes, and they do it, you know, with the technicians as well too. So you're in there learning product knowledge, learning gear shift ratios, learning how much a truck can tow, so that you can help the customer looking to buy a, you know, half-ton or ton truck because he's towing so many pounds. So you're learning the same way as the guy, and you just have to prove to your customers that you know the knowledge. And when you've shown them that, and you follow up and you find the answers, and you don't act like you know everything, but you find it out for them, they appreciate that.
Right.
And they know that when they have a problem, you're going to help solve it instead of passing the buck.
But I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know there was I didn't know what to ask for. You know, I didn't know that there was an air filter that had to be cleaned. So what can we do to help women? I mean, if we don't know what we don't know, what can we do, when we go into the mechanic who says, hey, and I've had this happen, you need new brakes when I didn't need them, or you need new tires when I didn't need them, or, how can we know going in what to do and what kinds of questions to ask?
So of course, it's always good to to shop around, to first off make sure that whatever shop or dealership that you go to, that you can trust them. You can speak to different salespeople, even speak to the mechanics, and just to give that that vibe of confidence that within yourself, as well with them. For sometimes it's difficult, I would say, depending on the situation with your vehicle. So for example, with the smell in your car, of course, the more details that you have, the better chances that if the service advisor or salesperson at the counter has enough knowledge to say, hey, it potentially could be this, or if it's something simple, let's take a quick look, or with just being able to ask the right questions would be just to it's good to with a salesperson to bring that knowledge to you when you purchase that vehicle.
Well, you also said earlier when you and I were talking off camera about going to the same place all the time. Mm-hmm. So say a little bit about that.
So when I lived in Charlottesville years ago, there was a particular independent shop that I went to a couple times, and after learning a little bit more about my vehicle on my own, I went to them and would talk to them specifically about certain parts of my vehicle. And it was helpful because they were very honest and detailed with what I wanted to learn. And so being able to trust where you're going is very helpful. So I continued to go to them, and they knew that when I came in, if I only needed an oil change, if I couldn't do it, they would help me. They would inform me. So hey, heads up, you would potentially need this in the future. Okay, well, give me an idea of when, but why? Right. Why is this happening? And just like I would do at my job is, give that detail, and is this okay to hold off for a little bit, or is this something severe that needs to happen? And being able to describe everything.
What's going on?
So they are aware.
This one time I went to get my older car inspected, and they told me I needed like $500 worth of work, and I took it to some place that just does inspections. Not only did it not cost me that much money, I mean, it cost me half of that, but he said, hey, you know what? Because your car is so old, I'm going to go order the parts on eBay where I know I can get them really cheap for you. And also, the next time I brought it back, he let me order the parts myself, and I don't find too many places that allow me to purchase. That happened a couple of times with me because I got to know him, and he trusted me and I trusted him. And so, there's not a lot of places that let you order your own parts and then come in and, just do the repairs on it. So, but I've discovered the more I take charge of my car and my vehicle, mm-hmm. and understanding it and knowing about the kinds of things that could be wrong and things like that. I wish the Car Talk guys were still on NPR, but they're not anymore. But the more I feel that they respond in kind by respecting me more because I know a little bit more about the car. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just saying there are still some little courtesy things that in today's world that are missing. And one of the things, like you mentioned, a smaller independent shop can take a little extra time like that. But if you noticed, and this doesn't really pertain to whether we're women or men, but just throwing out about the car industry, when you used to go to a service station and you would need air in your tires, or you needed your oil checked, or you needed windshield washer fluid, there isn't anywhere that does that. And that's sort of an old-fashioned thing.
Right.
And we still offer that complimentary, no appointment necessary. You can come in our service lane and we'll check your oil, put air in your tires, put windshield washer fluid in, and it's an old-fashioned courtesy that you can't find today. You know, it's paying for air. It's maybe it works or it doesn't at, you know, a convenience store. And just so some of those things that are comfortable for a woman, especially a woman that doesn't know how to, or an older gentleman, check the tire pressure. So it's something nice that, you know, again, having, you know, a female owner looks at some of those niceties that can be helpful.
I know myself, I've got an older Prius, and so what happens is the tire pressure light constantly comes on when the weather changes dramatically. And for a while there, it was going, so I'd get it all air and tires recalibrated, and 2 days later it'd be going on the same thing, and I went, okay, this is ridiculous. So I finally took it back to the dealer, and the guy in the garage said to me, and they do it, you know, for free there, and he said to me, you didn't check the spare tire. That has a sensor on it too. And I went, I didn't know that, you know. So one of the things about women is that we don't just do our jobs. We tend to be part of the community that we're in too. And so Simona, I've known for a long time, and I know you are on boards of directors, like you were on the governor's board to serve for the Virginia Veterans, and on the board of trustees there, the Chamber of Commerce leadership, the Salvation Army. I mean, you've done a lot of things in the community, and you know, you give back all the time. Why is that a part of your, you know, what it is that you do because I met you at a chamber event.
Well, because of our lack of, I guess, public transportation, everybody drove where they went. So I always want to make sure they liked how they got there.
Now, wait a minute. That has nothing to do with the Veterans Board.
No. But the thing is, I like tying the community in, and people that are going to events or taking their children to sporting events, or they're commuting from Louisa or Culpeper to work at UVA and they're on the road a lot, you want to be a part of helping them do it safely, comfortably, and it's just that when you're touching people in the community, I find the barriers and guards are let down, because it's all types of people that make up our community. I'm in the automotive industry. I sell all types of cars. Same way with a shoe. There's a million shoes out there, but there's only one that style you might like that you go to all the time, that's your comfortable zone. So just in meeting people and giving back and working within the community, whether it is seniors or children or people at my church or the community, it's the variety that I like. That's what's kept me in this automobile industry, because of the variety it offers and all types of people, whether you're a different financial income levels, ethnicities. It's just a big mix. And I like people. I probably got it from my mom. She was an educator. So she, you know, never met a stranger and always wanted to help somebody with something. So I just feel that in the area of my expertise, I always want to kind of help somebody. And
Well, you're, in this day and age, how many people stay in the same job for all these years, and find diversity in giving back to them? I mean, you've won a lot of awards and certificates for all the work that you've done in the community too. I mean, how many young people stay in the same job over and over and then find their, passions in doing other things in the community? Lindsay, you're young, you have young children, and you're just starting out in this career path. How have you been part of the community in some way?
I'm sorry.
How are you part of the community?
I've pretty much, as far as with what I do, I did some volunteering in previous industries with the restaurant. But with what I'm doing now, I'll be honest, I haven't done a whole lot with my community. I try to do what I can with my children's schools.
That's part of the community.
Well, it's, I will say, as a single mom, with the amount of hours that I do work, it has been more difficult, but I try to do what I can.
Well, you're
for
also
everyone.
working, you're raising children, and you're going to school.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're trying to juggle many things simultaneously and still be part of your children's, school community and your church community and things like that. So that's still a part of, the reason I asked you was because women don't realize all the things that they do. We think that these little things that we do all over the community and everything, well, they're not that important. But really, all the little things are what build up to bigger kinds of things. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, you see women all the time coming into your places, and I hear a lot of women come and talk to me about their financial status and their inability to, like single mothers, for example, to purchase a car. Do women extend themselves too much and not balance their finances too much when it comes to the car industry? Like if somebody comes in and all of a sudden they need, a $300 job, or, they want to purchase a new car. How do you find that women are, and I don't want to compare them to men, but women in general, in terms of their finances and either purchasing or taking care of automobiles?
But we're good shoppers. So majority of the purchases, if there are a couple, husband and wife, most of the time he'll joke and kid and say that his wife holds the pocketbook.
There you go.
Because we are better at dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Yep.
And knowing where the money goes.
Yep.
And when a woman is single and she's coming to do that, she is also doing normally a better job because she's dependent on herself. And we know how to find a bargain. We're good at shopping a sale. So one of the things that I talk about with people are their wants versus their needs. They're trying to get from point A to B and how they want to do it. And lots of people will have champagne taste and a beer budget, but you learn
That's a
how
good
to
way
work
to put
with
it.
it. And who doesn't like a great sale that you feel you're getting this value here, but for this pricing? So there's always a sale at the dealership, so you always feel mentally you're buying something on sale. But it's a matter of finding the things and talking with someone, just like a financial advisor. What do you really need?
Right.
And I know there are some wants there, like you may not really need the sunroof, but you do want it, but you've got to have the automatic transmission because you can't shift gears.
Right.
Things like that. So you just talk about it. But I wanted to just go back and tell you that your community involvement can also be with your children and their sports activities and school activities, because how many other single parents or women are out there and they're having a problem with their car and maybe they can't afford to go to the mechanic or don't know where to go. And this is your expertise And they may not even realize that. And you could say, well, they're telling someone else that, my car is doing this, I'm not sure about that. And you can say, well, is it doing this, this, this? And they'll say, really? And then you can tell them, it might be this. Yeah. Have that checked. And so maybe that can be a way that you're giving back in your community with your expertise, unbeknownst to a lot of other women, because you're always talking about problems you have with the car because you're in your car as much as you're at home. Sometimes people are in their cars more than they're at home, especially those that are commuting 50 miles one way to get to work. Then they're at work and they're back in that car again, and they're at home that short period to sleep and get up. So that might be a niche you should look into.
That's a great perspective.
Helping.
Yeah,
that's a great perspective.
One thing that I have noticed, where I was actually speaking with the owner of the company, Scott, he mentioned, once you're in this industry, you can't get out, even if you leave and long gone into something else, because I always catch myself when I'm driving down the road, oh, your headlight is out, or oh, hey, you have blue smoke coming out of your exhaust, you're burning oil. So it's, and I have had a few people ask me, my little cousin actually, she said, hey, my tires are wearing weird, and it ended up being the camber, which is a certain way that the wheel is tilted. It was tilted too far out, so it wore the inner portion of the tire.
And definitely people that are at your church, maybe too, that you see regularly, if they know what it is that you do, you'd be surprised at how many people will come to you and say, hey, I just want to ask you about this, or something. So.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is when women are breaking the glass ceiling in a male-dominated industry, especially, I know because I've placed some of my clients with autism in garages, the banter that goes on between men oftentimes is, as well as male-dominated, and so, we women don't do that kind of thing. And so how have you managed to function, in that kind of environment?
As a kid,
do they tease you as well, or?
Oh, I always get,
because that's the bonding, in a garage.
So it's being the only female in my class at K-Tech, and being the only female. Well, besides my boss's wife, she does the accounting portion there. So there's been times that I'll get teased, or what are you doing here? You don't know what you're doing. And then if it's a customer especially, I'll snap back, well, why are you bringing your car here? And why am I telling you what's wrong with it? So they'll say, oh, touche. Sometimes, there are some challenges where there's been some older men that come in and, I need to speak with the owner or the other advisor because I don't believe you know what's the issue with my vehicle. And so when I first started, I did just, step aside and say, okay, you don't feel comfortable with me yet because I'm a new face to you. But as they were coming,
great line.
But as they came in, if especially on the phone, I need to speak with the owner or the other advisor. If they're busy or not available, I can help you. Oh, really? I even had a female come in a couple months ago, and she needed her tire pressure checked. And just like with dealerships, they have the free air. We have free air as well. So I said, okay, well, let's go check it out. You can do it? And after I checked all of her tires, got everything set for her, I'm so sorry, I did not mean to sound sexist or anything to you. It's just, it's not common to see females in this industry. I was like, well, you can come here as often as you want, because I'm not going anywhere.
Good for you.
Well,
how about the banter?
You become thick-skinned because in the beginning.
You were in the beginning not just
In the beginning,
not just a woman,
I'll
but
say it was a
African-American
sea
too.
of pale males.
Yeah.
And I looked totally different.
Yes.
And there would be, because I remember I started in the 80s.
Yes.
So there would be sexist or racist, different jokes sometimes. I mean, you're in a male-dominated field. So you hear stuff and then you kind of don't hear it because you want to keep going. And our dealership is family owned, so we didn't have a lot of that. But in the car business in general,
Right.
you know, you have things like that. So, and that could be intimidating to a more milder, meek woman trying to start. But as time goes on, you learn how to just keep going. I know one of the things when I did start winning Salesman of the Month, after a while I kept saying, Salesman of the Month? And I got it changed to Salesperson.
Very good.
So now, I mean, everything is salesperson.
Very
it's
good.
It's not salesman, but it was always a salesman of the month. And I
Right,
said,
right.
that just was an oxymoron.
Good
that didn't go together.
All right, here's the question. New or used, especially for women? What are the benefits and drawbacks, new and used, especially for women who are purchasing cars? What do you think? Well, you know, from a mechanic's point of view, what would you say?
Well, if you're looking at a used vehicle, if you have access to, especially if the vehicle's only been through dealerships or independent shops, if you have access to a Carfax report,
Right.
I would definitely look into that. And my instructor at K-Tech gave me a good tip, or gave the whole class a good tip, that if you're looking at a private seller, a really good spot to look is the brake pedal, because that can give you a huge lead on how they treat the vehicle. So are they slamming on the brakes all the time? Are they just that pressure, is it too much applied? One thing that I've always done when looking at a private seller is I check the frame, and I just take my finger and slide against the door frames where they close all the way around. I check the fenders, the quarter panels, the bumpers to see if they all align okay. If they don't, has this vehicle been in an accident?
Right.
If it has, what damage happened to it?
And sometimes when it's a private person, you know, they might make a deal with the person they are in an accident with, and it doesn't show up on a car report and things like that. One of the other things I look at is the windshield to see if it still has the original sticker on the windshield. Not sticker, it's the implanted in the glass on all
From the
the
factory.
windows from the factory made to see if it's still there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
New or used?
it's up to the individual, but sometimes, you know, for a particular person, new might be better because of the warranty. And you may want to, and it depends on how you buy your car. I have a lot of customers that like to lease, and they'll change their car every 3 years. So doing that during that ownership of 3 years, they have factory warranty. Anything breaks, it's free, it's covered, and it's peace of mind. So they're traveling, and after that time, they can decide whether they want something larger, smaller, a different type of vehicle. Used car industry is big. And the thing with that is you can buy late model used cars that still have new car factory warranty. And most all of our used cars come with warranty as well. So what people are trying to buy is peace of mind, knowing that you got something after checking the Carfax, or that every time you get in your car, it's going to start, at least for the first part of the years that you own it, because as time goes on, they're going to need to see you more.
Right.
But it's just a matter, I've just got this vehicle, and you don't want any problems. So new is great, but kind of new, fairly new, late model used is great. And then later on, a used car, depending on your budget. Can
I ask a question? If a car, like, there's a lot of weather issues these days in the United States, especially water. if you're in Louisiana and you're, flooded, or, if you're in one of these places that is flooded, does that always show up on a Carfax? I often wonder about that, when it comes to
where the car comes from will show up.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
there
if
are
it's been in a
checks that will
flood.
say flood damage,
Okay.
or there's about 30 different things that they check, whether there was hail damage, flood damage, whether the type of title it had, recalls, all
Okay.
kinds of things. If there's a current recall on the car outstanding,
Right.
We can't sell that used car if the recalls have not been done. It's a lot of things that are checked through that for customer safety and satisfaction.
I often wondered if, all those kinds of things, knowing like people making deals with people when they're in an accident and things like that, it doesn't show up on a car report and things like that. But I really appreciate your, the finger test with, checking the frame and things like that. These are
Helpful
all things, these are all things, who thinks about asking about these things, I just discovered that there's a date on the tire. I had no idea. I purchased this car thinking I had brand new tires. It said 2009. I had no idea until, my mechanic showed me that. Or, cleaning out the air. I didn't even know there was an air filter. Or, turning on the air conditioning when you're turning on the heat. These are all really important things. And I didn't know what to ask those questions. And so, it's really... Or, for example, I got one of the cars painted, and when I got it back, it whistled on the driver's side. And they redid the stripping, they did everything on it. Turned out that when they painted the car,
glass.
they took off the door, and when they put it back on, they didn't align it properly. So they took the door off and put it back on, and the whistle went away. So, there's all kinds of things that go on in the car that, you have absolutely no clue, what's going on. And I guess listening to your car and paying attention to your car is really important too. I think sometimes we don't really, what are the kinds of things we need to do to like yearly, monthly, besides change the oil,
Rotate your
tune up,
tires.
rotate your tires, tune up. What is there anything else that we really need to? I know as your car gets older, I have had pumps removed, changed and things like that. How often do you change the brakes?
So, depending on one thing that I always can't always say it to customers, but for someone, especially for family or a friend, I would say, you get what you pay for. If you buy cheap, you're gonna get
Right.
cheap. Perfect example so you say brakes, brake rotors. If you get uncoated rotors, they're gonna rust quicker than coated rotors are. So in the long run, when it comes to parts, if you buy something that's a little bit more expensive but has a good warranty on it, and has a good safety rating on it, then they should last. So brakes, you could be looking between 60 and 80,000 miles, just depending on the brand, and that's
And
for
whether
a
or not
good
you
rotor.
ride your brakes.
Okay.
Oh yes, I guess you would say just like in the grocery store, you have a
Yeah, there
variety
you
of
go.
every chip in
Right,
the world.
right. Well, in these last few minutes, is there anything you'd like to convey to the audience? And, is there any kind of advice or anything that you would like to, tell anybody who's watching?
All right. I'd like to say there are many, many cars out there, and there are many places you can go and buy one. But what you want to do is look to find what's convenient to you. Where you live, if the dealership is close by, it's easy to get to, and then make sure the service department is accessible for you, whether they have shuttles to take you home or to work. If the person that you're talking to and they're following up with you during your process of shopping, then there's a genuine interest and it's more convenient for you. So those are things that you want to take in the big picture of, especially if you don't know exactly what you want and you're just shopping around.
Lindsay, do you have anything?
So I would say for when maintaining your vehicle, a lot of times, and I'll even admit myself when I first started driving, I didn't know about putting oil in the car. I blew my first engine after
Oh, wow.
6 months of owning it, but I was young and dumb, and then my grandfather definitely changed me for the better on that. I definitely learned from that experience. So yeah, since then I knew to put oil in the car and check it. But a lot of people think, oh, I just need to change the oil and get new tires every 5 or 6 years. But with different fluids, your transmission fluid, your clutch fluid, brakes, pretty much if you maintain the vehicle, just like you change your oil before it goes bad. Just you can look at the manufacturer's recommendations, but also think of your living conditions. So for Virginia, the weather has a mind of its own. It wants to be 50 degrees in January, so be it. But being able to understand what's best for your vehicle and maintaining it as you should. So transmission fluid every 30 to 50,000 miles.
Well,
It's good
thank you
to-
so much, ladies. I truly, this has been really educational.
Good.
I want to thank Simona Holloway from CMA's Colonial Auto Center, and Lindsay Cason who's the mechanic at Scott's IV Exxon. And I really appreciate I hope you've learned as much as I have about taking care of your car. And please visit us at What Wize Women Want, and remember, Wize is spelled with a Z, whatwisewomenwant.com, to see this show and all the other shows that we've had in the past. And join us again on Charlottesville CPA, Channel 13, Comcast Channel 13, and we are here 4 times a week on that channel. We have unbelievable stories coming up with a lot of information. And remember, ladies, you are the people who do the purchasing power. So get educated and watch us. WhatWiseWomenWant.com. Thank you.